All right. So first of all, thank you all for coming, and for the rest of you who are getting this on video, this is our monthly Zoom call. We're here the first Wednesday of every month at 11:30. I like to kick off the month with you to have us start out the month in a powerful, positive place. And we have been doing this work, My 7 Steps to Personal Power. We started in January with step one. So it's the fourth month. So we're technically on step four, which is baby step it out. And before I get into baby stepping it out, I want to do a little bit of a review because I feel like it's important to me to review right now. Just had a bunch of stuff come up, and one of the things for me is the most important is that I always lead you by doing this work with me, right? So I'm always doing the work myself. I don't want anybody to ever think I have it all figured out, or that like I'm some, guru or anything like that. Like I'm just a human being always doing this work and flexing my muscles right along with you. And so in the first part of the book and the first part of our work, we do a lot of talk about waking up. And I'm working on a revise of the book. So I'm really excited about the new version that will be coming out. Um, um, anyway, in the first part of the book, I call it waking up, but really, my whole goal is to have you get really conscious of your own wiring of the body and the mind, right? Of the body and the mind. And so, one of the things that we review in the book and in the new book, I'm going to have my friend Abby Young is working with me, and she's a therapist, and she teaches and talks about the polyvagal theory. And the idea of the polyvagal theory again is just that you are wired up. You have this vagus nerve that runs all the way down your spine, and it has little tentacles that go out to every single organ you have, all of your systems. And that as you grow up and you have stuff happen, this kind of can imprint on us, on our bodies and our minds. And so in the book, we mostly talk about the mind and we don't talk about the body as much. But the whole point of this is I want all of you to be doing whatever you can to learn about your wiring in your system and how it works, because this thing is running you most of the time. You're not running it. Like it is running you. It is in charge of you most of the time. And part of our goal as creating conscious leaders is to have the consciousness enough to watch that thing go and not respond to it, not or respond to it, but not react to it, to not be reactive, to not let it run us, but to have us have enough consciousness to watch it. And when we're in deep fear, when we have anything going on that feels overwhelming or scary, or if we're just in an old pattern, that seems like it's almost impossible. So recently I had a big upset in my life with one of my children. I had a big fear thing come up. And the thing for me, and I talk about this a lot in the book, is that my big thing is perfectionism. I really do want to be perfect. And I'm not kidding about that. Like, it's an ultimate goal over here to be perfect. And so when I fail at being perfect, especially when the stakes are high, when it's my own kid's mental health or my own kid's life at stake here, I feel A, terrified, and B, I can get into such loathing of myself. And even though, right, I talk about how way back when I was 18, I landed in a psychiatric unit for suicidal ideation, and I'm not there anymore. Like I don't live there anymore. And it's fascinating to me how dark I can go when I get scared, and how dark I can go when I'm faced with my own imperfection and not having any answers, not being able to do it right, and how much I struggle and can fight against that. So recently, we've been watching a TV show called Shadow and Bone, which is on Netflix. It's kind of a weird TV show, but it's very cool. And one of the things that the evil master, for lack of a better word, creates these monsters that are made of like black smoke, and that's all they're made of is just darkness. And there's a sun summoner who it brings in the light. And I think it's so interesting sometimes to watch TV and watch how spiritual concepts leak into TV shows, right? And how everybody kind of gets this, right? It's like this isn't rocket science. People know this. And for myself, it's so important to remind myself that this wiring that can go so dark and so angry and so rageful and so loathing and so self-pitying and so blah blah blah, right? All of this, when I get that darkness come over me, it's a block to the light. It is a block to the light in me, right? And so what is important in my work all the time in waking up and having you become conscious is I want you to be conscious enough to be able to see that these patterns that we have that envelop us in darkness, we have to find a way to let in the light. And what happens is the more dark we go, right, the more scared we are, the more fearful we are, the more self-pitying, the more loathing, the more trying to be perfect, the more trying to get it right, the more we do, it really does block out the light. And at some point, we have to be willing, and I assert that's a level of vulnerability, right? It takes a level of vulnerability to like open ourselves up to that the light that really is always in there, right? So that's the most important piece is that my inner being, your inner being that I see all the time is always light. There's no darkness in you. You're always light. The fear, the loathing, all of that seems like that you have darkness within you. It's just an illusion, but it's an illusion based in this wiring that has wired you up to be safe. And remember, one of the most important premises that we create for us is that you wired yourself up to be safe. So how can we not have compassion for that? Right? We are always really driving home that compassion. Like we really have to have a lot of compassion for ourselves, for others, but most importantly, compassion for ourselves, because I assert, especially the people that that are attracted to working with me, y'all are so hard on yourselves, right? And it's yourself that you start to beat up and take on. And so we want to really find access, whatever it takes, to getting access to that light so that we can kind of get some space and be able to see correctly. Because the truth is, that's all you are, right? Who you are, the who of you is this light being that we can see. And yet, boy, can I go dark and get that blocked. And I just had this situation recently where it was so scary for me that, boy, that's what came up for me was to protect myself, defend myself. I got super hijacked. I was being run by my limbic system. Like all of that was going on, and I went there. I went to a very dark place, and it was fascinating to me that I can still go there, right? That I can still deny what I know to believe is my light, right? And it's been 30 years I'm working on this stuff, and it's just fascinating to me that I can still go there. And I think it's so important to share because we can all go there. That's part of being human. That's what it is to be a human being. Is you're going to be scared, you're going to be freaked out in your life, you're going to have sad times, mad times, bad times, and part of the goal is to keep going and remember that at some point we're going to find access to that light, and a willingness to keep pulling that light towards you, I think, is so important. So in the first part of the book, when we're waking up, we talk about, lately I've been talking about the polyvagal theory. We also talk about your amygdala, which gets hijacked and then sets you completely offline, right? I was so hijacked, I couldn't see straight. And I'm, still have some resonance from the hijack. It was a pretty big one. And we also talk about your reticular activating system, which is the part of your brain that goes from your subconscious mind to your conscious mind to your subconscious mind, which is the stuff that you find you thinking about a lot. And so we have to really be conscious about what we focus on in our lives, because what we focus on will always get bigger, right? What we focus on will always expand. And so that's just a part of it's part of your reticular activating system, part of the design of human being. And we know it because we see it all the time, that what we focus on will always expand. What we put our attention on will always expand. So we want to put our attention on things that are work for us, things that have us feel good, things that are working in our lives, things like that. I try to fill myself with as much positive news as possible. There's just as much positive things happening out there as there are negative things. It's just that the news likes to focus on the negative things. And right now in the world, right now, unless you've got your head in the sand, you would know that, there's over 430 anti-LGBTQ pieces of legislation floating out there. And I could really be hijacked every day if I let myself. Like, I could really be hijacked every day. I choose to not focus there. I choose to stay in my lane, focus on the difference I can make, and leave the rest up to the universe and to smarter people than me who can go deal with legislation and things like that. I cannot dive into that, or I would be depressed and sad all the time, right? I'm not interested. Then I can't make the difference, right? If I'm covered up in my darkness, my sadness, my depression, I'm not the light. And what's important to get is the light, which occurs sometimes so counterintuitive, because it feels like when I'm mad and I'm pissed and I'm freaked out, that I feel like I'm strong, right? But really, that inside that darkness is weakness. And that the strength in me, the strength in you, lies in your light. The strength in you is your light. Your light is your strength. I learned a long time ago that my strength lies in my vulnerability. My ability to be vulnerable, to like take away the guard, to take away the armor, really has me show up as strong and as a light. And that's where I am my strongest. And yet it occurs sometimes, like when I'm mad or when I've got that cloak of darkness on, that I'm strong, right? And that's not the truth. That's part of the illusion, is that the darkness is strong. But the reality is the light can slice through the darkness. And if you watch the show, you'll see that too, that the light can slice right through that darkness. And so we should begin the book by this waking up and an acknowledgement that we're human, right? And that we are wired up, and that we got to be conscious of our wiring. And the more mindful we bring in the mindfulness, the more mindful we are, the more we can have our eyes on, oh, that's just my wiring. And how am I going to move myself out of that rut? Now, you have to remember that the grooves in your brain, I mean, they really do form grooves because they're thought patterns, right? Thought patterns that form grooves in your brain can be like wagon wheels through mud, or I live in Kansas, monster truck wheels through mud, right? I mean, you put a monster truck rut going through a big puddle and it forms a rut that's hard to get out of. And so it takes a push. It takes a push for us to get out of it. So in step one, we commit, and that's what we did in January, we commit to always being willing to push ourselves out of that rut, to always getting back on the horse by constant forgiveness, by practicing constant forgiveness, and having that just willingness to, even if we have to take a day to put the covers up over our head, taking the time to go read the book we want to read, go talk to the friend, go do my work, whatever it takes to get yourselves pushed out of that rut. And in step one, we kind of commit to an ongoing personal transformation. So in the book, I define transformation as chipping away at everything, chipping away at everything. I talk fast and run my words together sometimes. I apologize. Chipping away at everything that is not your highest best self. And I still like that definition. I use the image of David, who now is apparently part of pornography, of David, and how, Michelangelo, when asked, how did you carve David out of that hunk of marble? Michelangelo said, I just chipped away at everything that was not David. And so I love that image of us chipping away at everything that's not our highest best self. But also, I'm doing my best to stay away from, I really love the practicality and providing practical transformation for people. And so in this next book, in addition to that definition, I just want to define transformation as profound change. A profound change that we do on purpose, right? That we take practical steps to create a profound change within us. And what there is to remember is that sometimes before a profound change, like if you look inside the cocoon of a butterfly, it is a mess in there. Like, it is just a mess. And sometimes before a profound change, we are a mess, right? We are just a mess. And so, what we have to be conscious of is that being a mess doesn't mean that you're broken or that there's something wrong with you. It's just that you're gearing up for a profound change. And so, I really want to have us commit to people who are conscious of pulling towards us and taking steps towards on purpose creating profound change in every area of our lives, especially anything that's in the way of us being powerful and successful and happy in every area of our lives. So that's step one, where we really commit, right? We're just committing. This is what I'm going to do. And I'm doing it for the rest of my life. And just like me, sometimes I get bucked off the horse, right? Sometimes something will come along and just throw me. And, I've got to flail around for a while and find my feet. But I'm always willing to get back on that horse because I'm powerfully committed to being a human being that is always seeking profound change and light in my life. So that's step one. Now, step two is in the book, we call it getting to a happy place. The reality is that step two is the truth is that you've been, whatever this mess is that you've been doing, whatever that area of our lives is that we're working on, we've been doing it for a long time. And there's no integrity in continuing it once we start to become conscious. And so step two is really about dialing in your integrity. It's about, we do it in the book and on this call and in your platform. All of you who are on this call have access to this platform. You have access to the happiness and productivity workout. Now, in the new version of this, we're going to call that an energy management workout. The reality is you have to have integrity around managing your energy if you're going to create a profound change. You cannot keep doing the same old things, saying the same old stuff, doing the same old actions and expect profound change. That's just not going to happen. So we have to dial in a new level of integrity in order to be available for this new profound change. The integrity and the happiness and productivity workout first starts with prioritizing time for yourself. And I start there because I work with a ton of women who have been trained to take care of everybody else first before you take care of you. And that's the first area that I want to absolutely obliterate, because you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first in order to have the energy and vitality to take on whatever you want in your life. And you cannot continue to give from an empty bucket. Certainly, you can't have a profound change if you're constantly giving to the point of being depleted. And so we start with, how much do you prioritize time for yourself? The next thing we do is we take on your mouth, watching your mouth. How do you talk to yourself? Do you gossip? Do you complain? Do you make requests instead? We ask you to give up gossip and give up complaining. If you want to gossip, we ask ourselves, is it kind? Is it useful? Is it true? And if it's not useful, true, or kind, we keep our mouths shut because we know that's going to serve us best. And it
I
takes
think
a
I'm
level
sorry.
of, oh, it's okay. It takes a level of integrity, right, to dial that in and to keep ourselves in integrity with that. The next thing we dial in is gratitude, really focusing on that reticular activating system, activating gratitude. And then we're looking at your personal foundation is the fourth thing, which is really about like just getting your ducks in a row, making sure that you have your house in order and your checkbook balanced and your car clean and your will done, and taking care of tolerations in our lives, having things in order. Then we take on the bigger things. We give up taking things personally and assuming anybody's actions are about us, because it's never about us. We are conscious of our operating system, what gets us hijacked, what are the things that can take us offline. And then lastly, it's leaning inside and quieting your mind and just taking some time to be still and just be still and let some of that light come upon us rather than always out there trying to do. So step two is about dialing in integrity and creating a strong personal foundation so that the new you, the new profound change that you're creating can be alive and real, because you cannot again have profound change by doing the same old all the time. You've got to take yourself to a new level of integrity. So that's step 2. And then in step 3,
Can I say something, Jay?
yeah, if you don't mind just holding on, because this is a video that we're going to send out to everybody, and then we'll talk and have questions afterwards. If you wouldn't mind just writing down your questions, and then we'll do
Oh,
that in
sure.
a second.
No problem.
So then in step 3, is we are really starting to get clear about what you want. And so now we're committed to this process. We got a new level of integrity, and now we're getting clear about what you want. Now, the first thing we have to do to get clear about what you want is figure out what you don't want. And part of that is giving up an old story about yourself. This is when we dive in to starting to figure out the things we don't want to believe anymore, the things we don't want to believe about ourselves, the things we don't want to believe about the world, the things that we have decided along the way, and what stories we have created that go along with some of those beliefs, so that we can shed those stories and create this new profound change. But you cannot, again, create a profound change in your life with the same old story. So you have to be willing to give up the story that surrounds whatever belief you've got going on. Now, this is the area of our lives where it's important to acknowledge that we've had these things imprinted on us. We've had these things that may have happened to us, right? You've had some things happen to you, and those are real, and those things did happen. What's important is what you decided about yourself because those things happened is on you. What you decided about yourself because those things happen is on you, and it's a belief that we can unbelieve. Now, what's important to get is that there's some juice in believing these things. There's some juice in having these same old patterns. We get something out of this, right? It could be attention that we get from it. It could be that we get to be right that we're rotten. It could be that we get to be right that the world sucks, right? It doesn't, I'm not sure what, but there's always juice in there. Human beings do not keep up patterns, do not keep up behaviors when there is not a payoff. There's always a payoff somewhere in there. And so before we can figure out what we want, we get clear about what we don't want, and then we move on from there. So then once we get clear about what we want, which is what we did last month, we started looking at who do I want to be today? What do I want next in my life? The next step, which is where we are now, is step 4. And in step 4, we start to baby step it out. And I mean baby steps. I am not kidding when I'm talking baby steps. When I'm working with you one-on-one, if we're trying to create something and you have a baby step that I say, hey, what about this baby step? If I get at all that this is scary to you, we're going to back it up and make that step smaller. Sometimes that step is just making one phone call, right? But here's what we know. Action creates clarity, period. Action always creates clarity. Once we take a step towards something, we will have new information and we will know more about if that's something we want. Now, as human beings, we have a tendency to think we have to have it all figured out, especially of those of us who are run by perfectionism. I want to be perfect and I want to be safe. So I want to know every step of the way down the line before I want to take that first step. Jack Canfield talks about this in the Success Principles, and he uses a different highway, but I like to use I-70 because I live in Kansas. And no matter what, if you get on I-70 and you head west, you're going to hit Colorado. And you can't see Colorado from Kansas. You can only see the 25 feet in front of you that your headlights can hit if it's dark. You can only see, now in Kansas, you can see a lot, right? Because it's flat and you can see a lot of big sky. But you can't see Colorado. But you know that if you just stay on I-70, you're going to hit Colorado. Now, sometimes you may have to pull off and get gas. You may get wandered over to look at some the biggest ball of twine or the biggest gopher in the world or something weird like that. But that's on you. You're going to hit Colorado if you just keep going. And so the same thing is true with baby stepping it out. We have a goal that we want to get to. And if we just keep taking baby steps, we are going to hit that goal. Now, sometimes we have a huge goal, like we're going to shoot for the moon, and we don't necessarily land on the moon. We land on Jupiter, but boy, Jupiter is really where I wanted to be. But I didn't know that at the time I started out. So sometimes the action that we take takes us in a different path. But what's important is that we get in action. Once again, you cannot do the same old thinking, same old doing, and expect a profound change. So we are baby stepping it out, but we are tiny baby steps towards the goal that we want, all along the way, looking for signs, synchronicities, like really dialing in what's mine to learn and know, and what clarity am I getting by taking these baby steps. Now, sometimes it's one step forward and two steps back, right? It's like, oh, and a lot of that is managing the mind. Because again, we can't keep thinking the same things, speaking the same things if we're going to do something new. We have to create not only baby step actions, right? And step forward, what's so important in my book. It's not just actions, action creates clarity, but we also have to create a baby step conversation that we start speaking, thinking, believing that this thing can happen. And so in our speaking and in our thinking, we really do speak and start a new conversation for this thing being alive in the world. Now, this is easy to understand if we look at like Starbucks, for example. There was a time back in the day when Starbucks didn't exist at all. And at some point, somebody said, hey, do you think somebody would pay $5 for a cup of coffee? Sure enough, you bet they will. So it started as a conversation, right? Somebody having a conversation that this is possible, and then starting to follow the next threads and speaking and thinking. And now there's a Starbucks on every corner in my own town. I have a small town of 100,000 people, and there's probably, 6 or 7 Starbucks. So the reality is everything that's ever been started, every movement, every product, every idea, every business, everything always starts with a conversation. But it has to be a new conversation. It can't be your old conversation that you're not good enough, or you're not worthy, or you're not whatever. So in step 4, we really do start with creating, and I like to create new affirmations where we start with that I am statement. So it's like, I am, creating a life where, for example, one of mine in the past is I am creating a life where I find exercise that I love. And it's not a burden, and I don't feel like, oh, fuck, I have to go work out, right? And all I had to do is start thinking that and stop thinking, I hate to work out and I'll never get this figured out. That was my conversation. I had to stop saying that. And you have to be willing to give up this old story that I hate exercise and I hate it, right? And start being willing. And that's all I did was start being, okay, I'm going to find, this is possible. I could find something that I like to do that also gives me exercise. The next thing you know, I got to buy a bike just to keep up with my kids. And then that baby step of me getting a bike had me start getting on the bike once in a while. And at the first of it, I just baby stepped it out. I did 3 miles round trip or a mile and a half, or I'd go 15 minutes out and 15 minutes back. That means I got 30 minutes of exercise, right? Check the box. Next thing I know, and it's been years now, and it's taken years, y'all, years. It is not, when I go out on my bike, if I don't get 10 miles, I'm disappointed, right? And if I can get 15 to 17 miles, I'm happy about that. And I am joyful, and I don't feel like somebody makes me go ride my bike. I want to go get on my bike. I am someone who has exercise in my life that brings me joy. The show choir girl in me that would say I never work out would say that's not possible, right? I had a belief that I couldn't have that in my life. and I have transformed it. I have had a profound change in that area. But it took me giving up the language, stop saying that, giving up the language, giving up the thoughts that I can't have all that, or that it's not possible for me, and to start a conversation and a thought process by baby stepping out our thinking, our speaking, and our action. Because see, sometimes an affirmation sounds like bullshit to you. And in the book, we talk about your BS meter, meaning your belief system. So an affirmation has to resonate with your BS meter, right? You cannot be someone who has been self-loathing constantly and then all of a sudden start to say, I am worthy and I am loved, right? Your BS meter goes, no, you're not. And so in my work, we baby step out the speaking too. We say things like, I am starting to know myself as loved. I am starting to believe that I can find exercise that's fun. And that's how it started for me. For me, it was, I'm willing to believe that it's possible for me to find exercise that I love. I'm willing to believe that. And every time I heard myself be like, oh, I hate to work out, all that old conversation, I had to say, no, you can't go there. I'm willing to believe. And then next thing you know, there's an opening for action. And then I take that baby step action, like, hey, look at this. This is actually, maybe this is possible. Now maybe this is possible. Now it's, hey, this is possible. Now it's like, I love riding my bike, and it's a cardio workout. That's a really good cardio workout for me, and that I can do until I'm 100, right? So that's step 4, baby stepping it out, and a overview of what we've been doing so far this year. And those of you who are getting this video because you are part of the platform but couldn't make it, if you have time, first, after you watch this, maybe go back and look for yourself. What belief do you have? What area of your life are you working on? And how are you speaking about that? And how are you thinking about that? Because the most important piece of this is to really get clear about, what do you believe about this area of your life currently? Like, what do you really believe? And how we have a profound change in that area is to really start to baby step out new thoughts, new words, new conversations, and new actions. And the actions make the conversation true. So it's like, I'm starting to enjoy riding my bike. I just went and rode my bike and I had fun. See, look, I just did an action. Now I have proof. Because you gather evidence for all the things that you believe are true about yourself now. If you think you're not worthy, you gather evidence for that. If you think you're not good enough, you gather evidence for that. If you think you can't manage your finances, you gather evidence for that. Whatever it is, you gather evidence for. So we have to gather evidence for the new thing that we really want, right? We have to gather evidence so that we can create it as alive and real in our lives.